And I'm back here on the channel. It is the most earth-breaking, ground-shaking, but never media show money-taking. The man, the myth, the legend, the most electrifying villain in the YouTube entertainment today. And it's funny that I should say villain in the YouTube entertainment today because we are by far talking about the greatest villain. I'm just gonna say it because I know there's hardcore Halloween fans and stuff, right? And stuff like this, but this is the greatest villain in cinematic history. Like, and the reason why, before we dive into this review, is because this is a true life story. This is not bullshit. This is not fake. This is a movie based on an actual person, and the actor is brilliant. And I just want to start off our review by saying this before I introduce Stevie. If you guys remember this moment, that's not a knife. This is a knife. Oh my God. So if you guys don't know, we're talking about Wolf Creek. It is one of the most underrated horror movies I think out there. And with me today is Stevie J. What up, Stevie?
G'day Zod, g'day everyone. Yeah, I have to agree. Wolf Creek is one of the best movies I think I've seen, and definitely in the horror genre because the way that it was done was just, man, it was so chilling and it was scary. And I think for me, especially when I watched it at the time, and I knew what it was based on, that it was based on a true story, I was like, damn, that is some scary, scary shit, basically.
Yes, it is. So let me just give a little quick synopsis here. See if I can find my own page. Wolf Creek uh is hold on. I did not, oh my God, I put it in my description and I didn't put it in the, hold on a second. Normally I have like my stuff all pulled up, completely unprofessional today. I am so ashamed of myself because I normally have all of this stuff ready to go, but I went shopping with the girls, so you know how that goes.
Oh yeah, I know that happens.
Yeah, and I was rushing to get back, and then I didn't quite set up everything like I normally do. So, hold on a second. Let's see. Da 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 da. Okay, so Wolf Creek was released December 25th, 2005 in the U.S. It made in Australia 35 million, in the U.S. 27.7 million, and had a budget of 1.38 million. It's directed by Greg McLean, and
Are you there?
yeah, sorry about that. I was switching between, but I normally have the actors and whatnot, but I didn't put them down. But Greg McLean is a great director. We'll talk about why in this in a second. Um, and the dude who plays Mick in this is by far the highlight of this movie because he has two very important roles in this film. He has to portray this guy that you would trust, but he also has to be this cold-blooded serial killer at the drop of a dime. And it's all very expertly crafted. So let's get into the story first. Wolf Creek is based on true events about these four kids who go hitchhiking. They go to a place called Wolf Creek Crater. They're all uh, having a great time, filming stuff and things like that. When their truck or their car has, car troubles, and a kindly stranger comes up to give them a lift, take the car back to their place, and then madness, murder, and mayhem ensues. And that's basically the plot of this. And let's talk about the story, Stevie. Being from Australia, and I'm sure that that's probably something you guys heard about because it's around your neck of the woods. How true to the movie is this story?
Um, well, look, it It's fairly accurate. I mean, of course, there's things with a story like this you don't know. Nobody knows the complete ins and outs of it, but it certainly is pretty accurate with the story. And it actually, he merged Greg McLean, who wrote the screenplay and directed as well. He actually merged a few things together. So the overall story is based on the serial killer in the Outback, which is true. But what he also did was he actually wrote the screenplay. So interestingly, he wrote the screenplay back in 1997, but he didn't actually know about the Ivan Milat stuff yet and the serial killer stuff yet. But he wrote the screenplay and he read it to himself and he went, "Do you know what? That's crap. I don't I don't like that at all." So what he did was he heard about the Ivan Milat stuff, who was the actual serial killer. He heard about the story and what was going on there, and then he rewrote the screenplay and based it on that story. So what we got in the end was a merging of his original screenplay, but he essentially substituted his original core story for what we got and the real story of what happened. So that was really interesting, and he also wanted to have the character of Mick Taylor to be like a mixture of other likable Aussie characters like Steve Irwin, and then have the evil side. So the larrikin side of Mick Taylor is more like the Steve Irwin, the the happy kind of good guy. That's Steve Irwin, but he also wanted to make him one of the most evil characters in history, which I think he achieved as well. I mean, he had a lot to work with, and John Jarratt who plays Mick Taylor, I was so surprised. So to give you an idea, down here in Australia, John Jarratt has always been, or up to this point, had always been a reasonable actor. But for I think it was about 5-6 years leading up to this, or even longer, he was on a gardening show giving gardening advice to people. And he was like this, I think he was even on Play School at some point over here as well. So he was like a real family children's TV kind of personality. And so when I saw that he was cast for this, I was like, Wolf Creek, what's that? Is that, is he going there to do a gardening segment or what's he doing? But but then when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, this guy can act. Like, this guy is amazing. So I'm so glad that Greg McLean, first of all, decided to can his original screenplay because he wasn't happy with it. Then he based it on the true story, which is a big tick, which is awesome. And he also cast John Jarratt, who was just fantastic. So I think Greg McLean did a really good job getting the story down on paper.
Yeah, and the story with these kinds of movies is you walk a very fine line between true events and what's fictionalized, because in essence with serial killers you don't know what exactly they did except for what comes out in newspapers. You don't know how horrific it is. You kind of got to do a lot of guesswork, and hitting the character of the person too can be very hard to do, because most great serial killers in history have this balance of being like that guy next door, to this monster, this horrific, horrendous person that does all of these things. And welcome, Stone Cold Jeremy. Happy Sunday to you too. I'm learning how to balance that. So when you see them, you got to cast someone who has likability, but you got to cast someone who knows how to touch that inner darkness. And the weird part of this character is the glee that he has while doing this stuff. So I'm going to segue into the characters themselves and kind of go over, because this is some great acting, and not just Jarratt, who plays Mick, but the other people who play the victims, I guess you would say. They were very likable. And this is weird because in horror movies, you typically have this smorgasbord of people you don't care about that are just basically there to die. And we don't get invested in them because we really don't care. But this group, he was very smart. He kept it focused on four individuals. We kind of from the beginning see their connection. We see how tight knit they are. And a lot of people's complaints were, oh, the beginning was slow. But for me, that was good because I've watched a ton of horror movies. And throughout this whole thing, I see a lot of horror movies where they have these stupid, unrelatable characters. But in this, especially the final girl, as they like to call her in horror, she was so likable. I mean, these people were so likable. The kid, the guy who was with them, he was likable. Like when he's doing the Star Trek bit, and I'm like, oh, I like Star Trek, and they like Star Trek in other countries. Yeah, you know, and he's like, Captain's log, and they were all of the cast was so likable that when they meet this villain, you are enthralled and actually invested and give a shit when this horrible thing is about to happen to them. You like care, and that's another thing that was unusual for me about this movie. And for you, besides Mick, because we'll get into him, he's probably a whole chunk of discussion, but just the other characters. What did you think of the casting for these characters, and did you think they fleshed them out well? And that did you really connect with them and feel bad when shit went down?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I watched it again, and I was thinking about the pace at the start, and I can understand people criticizing the pacing, except what you've got to, and I think it's partly to do with people not quite having appreciation for the entire product of a film and the entire making of a film, because you know, and it's a little bit like Joker too. People did complain a bit about how the pacing of that, and it was a bit slow and whatever. But really, it's all about what it ends up like, isn't it? When it comes to a film, you don't watch a movie just for the start. You don't watch a movie just for the middle. You watch a movie really to get to the end, don't you? And so, for me, the way that this was done was so good that yes, it was slow, but it was realistic. So we met these characters, and yes, we got to relate to them. They're partying, they're backpackers, whatever. They're partying, they're getting drunk, talking crap and traveling across the countryside, and they're coming across issues they would normally always come across, the things that are everyday issues. So it did make them relatable. They had all these discussions that they were having, and interestingly, they didn't have really any romance in there yet. So there was no there was a little bit of talk about it, but not really. It wasn't a big focus. It wasn't like that was a big draw card for it. And the characters, I thought the actresses and the actor did well. So we got Nathan Phillips was the guy playing Ben, and Cassandra McGrath and Kirsty Morassi as the other two girls. And look, I don't know much about them, to be honest. I just know that they were in it, and they were good. I thought they were good. I mean, particularly the girl who was playing, the pig on stick, so to speak. She was really really good, and the guy playing Ben, I mean, gosh, he did so well throughout all of it. But they all, and like you said about John Jarrett and he playing Mick Taylor, they all at some point had to switch their acting styles and switch their characters to be going from happy-go-lucky, having fun backpackers to I'm frightened, I'm about to die, sort of thing. So I thought they all did a very good job, and yes, they were relatable. And so when we finally got to the really tough stuff, and they were all going through that, not only could you empathize with them, but they also did a really good job with the scenery and making you empathize with that as well, or think about that as part of their struggle, because they did a really, really good job at displaying just how desolate the whole place is, and how there's nothing out there. There's no, there's no help, there's no one coming, there's no, it's all just barren land. So they did a really good job at displaying that, and they even had the characters talk about running out of fuel, or if they got enough money for petrol, or they got enough petrol, all those little things just all tied together, and then some great shots of the car they were in driving out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, I think all of those characters were good.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. And this is going to be, we're definitely going to spend a lot of time talking about this stuff because there is a lot to break down. We'll get into the scenery and the shots because I feel like that deserves its own discussion within itself, because this is some of the best cinematography I've seen. But the characters themselves, I mean, there's not one person I could pick out of this cast that I said, hey, I don't like them, they're an asshole, they need to go. Even Ben, who seems like this guy, he just seems like, to put it in Australia terms, one of your mates. He like seems like someone you hang out with, have a beer. He's like that guy that likes to have fun, and
Yeah.
might be a player or whatever because he got the thing with the girls. But there's so much of them talking about what their plans are, what they're going to do, that I think what disturbed people, and they didn't even realize it, was the setup, because they made these characters so relatable that subconsciously, when you get to their situation, it's that much disturbing. Because when you think about the violence in this film, out of every horror movie I've ever seen, I don't really rank it as that gory. I mean, really, there's no like intestines coming out or anything like that. It's just the sheer brutality and the way it's delivered that makes those scenes haunting and disturbing. And the fact that you emotionally connected with these people on their journey, that when you get to these different parts, you're like, holy shit, like it flipped. Like, where did this come from? Why is this happening? They did a good job as placing us as if we're with this group and we're completely helpless to this madman. So with that, let me get into Jared and Mick. Mick Taylor in this movie, this guy is the epitome of everything I imagine in my mind a real life serial killer to be, because when they set it up and he's talking to them and he pulls over on the side of the road, he seems like a good Samaritan. And there's hints in his acting, like facial expressions and things, where you kind of feel like something is off, but like the hitchhikers, he lures you into that sense of security. I could believe he was giving tips on home gardening because I'd listen to him. And then, I could also picture him stabbing you if you didn't get the seed right or whatever. Like,
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
Mike, that's not how you do it. like, what can you say that I can't put into words here? His acting is phenomenal. Like, by far, he carries this film like Joaquin Phoenix would carry Joker. Like, it hinges on him being able to pull off this like switch, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, completely. I mean, like, I suppose there's an element like of being Australian. And watching this, there's also an extra element that makes it even more chilling and believable, which is there are characters exactly like Mick. So how he is in the beginning when he's nice to them. There are people who are exactly like that, and you would come across them in the country all the time, all the time. So I think from that standpoint, when he's portraying that part of Mick, he's extremely relatable to everybody, but 100% to Aussies as well, because I've been I grew up in the country, and I know lots of people like him, as in that side of his character, and it's 100% accurate. Like a bit erratic, a bit eccentric, a bit over the top, but also genuinely trying to help. I mean, I know in the case of Mick that wasn't that wasn't exactly right, but there are a lot of people like that act like that, and they really are just wanting to help. They're like completely over the top and eccentric and a bit quirky, but they They really are just trying to help. So that part was believable. And then that makes it just, you kind of know where it's going, but you don't know how it's going to get there. And Mick is helping him, and he's a bit funny, and he's a bit, sort of quirky. So they all sort of think he's a bit of a joke, really. They all sort of think, he's just a bit of a laugh, and he's a bit silly. And, I think Ben, gives him a little bit of crap at some point. And, and then one of my favorite scenes, and one of the things that displays his acting so well, I think, is when they're around the fire, and he's telling stories and stuff like this. They're all laughing, and then he just turns to Ben and he just glares at him as if like, "What are you laughing about?" And then he pretends to be joking, like he pretends to be making it a joke, but that look that he gives him, like right there in that second, and there's no dialogue, he's just looking at him, and you right then oh man, something's not right here. Like this
Oh,
guy.
you know what's funny? My dad is in the comment sections right now, Lee Cole. He said I look like I'm dressed like I'm ready for the Outback. He said to bring up that part because it's funny you should mention that. That is my dad's favorite part in this movie. Because he's like us, he watches the films and really picks out stuff. And that scene, I think if you are a real true movie watcher, that scene is the scene that tells you without telling you exactly where this is going. That's where you, as an audience member, start to realize that there's something not quite right about this guy. Because even the way they do it, right? The campfire is really low. It's got the roaring campfire kind of a thing. Everyone's laughing. And then it's like you could hear a pin drop because they stop laughing when he looks at him like that. And even Ben is like, visibly like, whoa, did I say something? And they make a comment later. The girls are like, oh, you upset him. Go apologize. You know what I mean? You know how women are. And so in that scene, it's like a little bit of that darkness we're gonna see later just seeps out, and you could tell this guy is not quite right. He's a little bit unhinged, and then he just flips it, and they're laughing and talking again, and it's the greatest display of what I imagine a serial killer would be like, right? Because they have that thing where just something snaps, and they just they do what they do. And and then he pulls it back like he has a plan, like, no, now's not the right time, kind of thing, you know what I mean? But for a split second you could see that moment where he was, I thought he was going to reach over and stab the guy right there. I thought that was the kickoff moment. And that speaks to the writing in this and the acting. This actor is so good with his facial expressions, even during the disturbing scenes. The way he's just laughing and joking and stuff, like he did when you met him, but now it's more disturbing. It's just got this whole nother element to it where you're like, he truly enjoys what he does. And, when he lets out that side, now he doesn't have to pretend. He doesn't have to put on his mask. The mask is off and this is him. And it's just like, holy shit, dude. Like, wow.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. 100%, mate. 100%. And you know what? There's, when we talk about horror movies, there's all these, silly jump scares and all of this over the top, the music and all that kind of stuff. But when you look at something so simple as that scene we were just talking about, where he gives that stare at the campfire, something so simple as that, no over the top noises, no jump scares, nothing like that, but it absolutely chills you to the bone because he's being portrayed one way, he's behaving one way, and then you get this little glimpse of who he really is, and then back to that boisterous thing. So it leaves this thing of doubt in your mind, this thought of doubt in your mind, like, did that happen? Was that the real him, or is that, was he joking? Is that what is it? And then when things really start to go bad, you 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 go, okay, yep, that stare was real, and he just turns from the most, joking, boisterous, silly almost. He seems stupid. He seems dumb character into the most evil and maniacal person you can imagine. And he has absolutely he just has no remorse, no regret, no nothing, no feeling at all, really. He's just laughing about the whole thing while he's doing all this bad stuff. And yeah, mate, I tell you, also, one of the other scenes that I really liked was the scene where they wake up and they're all tied up or whatever, or we don't know that yet, but that chick is going to try and find her friends, right? And she's walking around the compound trying to find her friends. So that was some of the most chilling, scenes in the movie, because the tension was there. We could hear the sounds of what was going on with the others, but there wasn't any visual. All we had was her trying to find them. And then when we finally saw through, her eyes, when she looks through into one of the buildings, the whole thing was so chilling. It was just at nighttime. We knew he was a psycho. All this crazy stuff was happening, and and then from there, we when we see where Ben is and what's happened to him, it's like, whoa, this is just getting insane. And it doesn't happen often to me, but my stomach was churning throughout that whole time. Like as soon as he captured him and they found out they were captured at the campsite, pretty much that the rest of the movie, my guts were churning the whole time, because you just didn't know what was going to happen.
And here's the thing about this too, which segues great into our next topic, which is the visuals and the shots. The visuals and the shots, the way that they frame this thing up, what they show you, is so disturbing, because this is what we talk about in horror a lot. I'm a huge horror fan. Me and you have done some reviews on horror movies. The most frightening thing is not necessarily what you see, but what you don't see. And this movie plays, I mean, don't get me wrong, they got their gory scenes, but for the most part, this movie plays more on what you can't see. And, you're really in the eyes of this woman as she wakes up and she's disorientated and trying to put everything together. And like you said, there are some shots of like the campfire. Their stuff is all askewed and rustled. She's groggy and disoriented. She has no clue what's going on. She's zip tied her hands. She has to cut them off, and and then they show the warehouse, and you look and see his like little kill room, and it's so simple yet such a like it's like a thing of death, like the things they pan into, and he's got like carcasses and things like that hanging up, and he's got his gun on the side, and he's got another gun on the table, and you're like, holy shit, man, this dude is crazy. And he's got her chained up. Like the visuals in this movie and when they choose to present these images is what really sells the film. So for me, I like some of the visuals when they're running and stuff like that, because one of my favorite movies is Alien, the original, and that had a lot of those, claustrophobic scenes and the wide shots and things like that. But it also had this sense of there's nowhere to go, there's nothing you can do, there's nowhere to run. And you watch this movie, it's so vast, but there's nothing there. So you can't go, oh, they can run to the neighbors. There's nothing around him. He's like miles out. So that gives you that sense of dread. I mean, what were some of your favorite like shots as far as the cinematography? Like,
Well, I really like the I like the part where, okay, so they wake up there, or she wakes up, she escapes, all of that stuff, and then the two girls are trying to get away, right? So they take his truck and all that. Anyway, after the truck crashes and he's looking for them, and they're hiding on the side of the hill, on the side of that mountain there, and he comes in his other car or whatever, and the headlights are shining over the top of the hill, and his silhouette is up the top of the hill while he's looking for him. And that was just like, it doesn't seem like much, but for me, I'm like, yep, that is some scary shit, because he's just sitting up there above him. All we can see is his silhouette, not his face. We think we can see what his face would look like, or imagine what his face would look like, but he's right there, right close to him, and he's just his silhouette in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. I think also some of the shots while they were, before they got to Mick, when they were out at the actual Wolf Creek place doing their sightseeing, I think some of those shots were really, really good too, because they showed the the personal stuff with the relationships and the characters talking and all that, but they also talked about how far they had to walk, how long it was going to take, and it gave that real feel of just how big and open the space is. And then they went to some of the big wide shots of where they were and just how small they were in that area. And Mick's place is right in the middle of all of that. And so yeah, like you said, it's in the middle of nowhere. There's nowhere to go, but they set all of that up with the with the shots leading up to it. And yeah, I think it's just amazing. And obviously the other one I really liked is towards the end. Pretty much all of that last scene where he's chasing her was awesome. I mean, the vision of her walking down the road all bloodied and everything is a great shot.
Oh yeah, that shot, and if I remember correctly, because I watched this last week to get ready for this week, but I was watching part 2 today. But the 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 part where she's just walking and then she falls and you hear the gunshot, that's a great visual because she doesn't fall right away. So you hear the shot, you hear it like connect, and then she falls. And for me, that was such a crazy shot because I'm like, oh my God, that is so like, wow. Like, this kindly stranger gets killed and,
Yeah,
she knows pretty much she's done. She's just walking because at this point, psychologically, that chick was broke. Like she's she's broken. So at this point, she's just moving forward, almost out of like a survival instinct to move forward. And Mick is just miles down the road, taking his time. I imagine just laughing, like going, oh, doing his own crazy shtick. And you guys can see by the picture that I have, that's the shot right there. And why I chose that picture was because that's the shot where he gets out of his truck and just, uses the sniper rifle and shoots. And it's so terrifying because, like I said, you got invested in, even though she lost the car, she lost the person to drive the car, she's just walking at this point, so it's completely hopeless. You're still like, come on, just a couple more miles on the road. There's got to be someone, but no one's coming. There's no one on that road. Where the hell is that road, Stevie? There's like no one there. Like 3 people get murdered. There's no one there.
yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, there's roads like that everywhere, but I mean, in that part of Australia, you literally drive. You could drive 10 hours and not see a single other car or anything. So, it's very accurate in that way, in that sense. Yeah, but I think that what they did really well as well, like you mentioned, the the Good Samaritan that came along or that was there in that final scene. She, one of the things they do really well, or the director did really well, was to keep us guessing. So we weren't sure, after that other chick got stabbed in the back, we were like, oh, okay, all right, so that they might not make it, and Ben obviously died a gruesome death. Then when we got to that final chick, and now you start thinking in the back of your head, okay, well, as most stories go, when it comes to horror, most of the time somebody survives. That's how it rolls. Most of the time somebody survives. So you're in your head and you're thinking, yep, okay, so she's going to be the survivor. She's going to go through some stuff and then she's going to make it. She's going to get away. But then and you think she's done that when she finds that person and she gets the car and everything, and then bang, no, not that's not how it pans out, and you know, and then you still think at some point, okay, well, she's going to get away somehow, like something, and then nope, she doesn't, and then see you later, Mick, off he goes, and that's it, and you're like, whoa, okay, I didn't see that coming. Like, is it
When
the
I
bad
first
guy? The
watched
bad guy
it,
wins.
yeah, because when I first watched it, I was like, who the hell is the survivor? Because, okay, let's just go right into the next session, which was scenes, okay? The movie very deliberately and very asshole like sets up this plot where that one girl gets out, right? The very girl in the beginning, and we'll get to Stevie's favorite part, the pig on the stick. Uh, now, she they set I mean, and this film director clearly knows horror because he sets this up like this is gonna be the survivor girl, right? Finds her best friend, knocks Mick over the head, grabs her, and they haul ass. And then she's like, okay, I'm gonna leave you here. If I'm not back by this time, then you just haul ass, find help. So in our mind, right there, we go, okay, it's either this chick or this chick, right? She goes back in, and then she finds all of the stuff. And I want to talk about that scene for a second because they never show all these people getting killed, but it really hit me, and you know yourself too, having kids. They showed the one particular video with the family. I forget what part of Europe they were from. I think they might have been German or something. But it was the husband, the wife, and the little boy, and they show these clips of these camcorders that he's collected and all their bags and hiking gear and all and photos and all of this stuff, and you start to see in every shot of these videos where he was in the video, like how he was stalking them and stuff. And that particular scene with the little boy and his family and stuff, and then it cuts to the campfire and the thing's kind of on the ground and you see everyone's dead and he's just kind of standing over there. That really got to me because they don't have to show a kid getting murdered, but the implication that he's just so cold-hearted, he literally wiped out this family. It's so chilling. Like, she's literally in his trophy room.
Oh,
And I don't know about you, that really got to me. I was like, wow,
oh,
she's got to take this guy out.
oh, 100%, mate. 100%. It was absolutely like seeing that was just like, oh, what he's been, he was there, he was here, he's been watching him the whole time, and like, yeah, and with the kid, the children involved as well, like that's a part of it too because it just adds a little bit more of that empathy because nobody wants anything to happen to a kid. So when we saw all of that being revealed in when she woke up, I think it was in the video camera, wasn't it? And
Yep.
or in the camera, yeah, and showing all of those shots that he was in, following them all the way. It's just like, oh wow, like they were set up from the beginning, and he's obviously, we know he's gone and tampered with the vehicle and everything, but I think something that should be said is that the the directing was so careful in this. And I don't mean that in the sense of playing it safe. I mean, it was just carefully crafted because he knew what he was trying to achieve, and he really set all of that up because you had moments like that throughout it. And yeah, people could say that it was slow in the beginning, but the setup was so good. The setup was there that when all these things started happening, your stomach was just churning the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the scene we got to talk about, the infamous pig on the stick scene. That is crafted so well because for me, that was a big plot twist, and it kind of upended my, I hate to say this word, damn you, Ryan Johnson, but it subverted my expectations because I was there thinking this was going to be the girl. They set her up. She gets the revolver on, and puts it on the thing. I'm like, good for you. She's doing all of the things that smart survival characters do. right? She goes through, she gets the right ammunition. I thought maybe she'd get the wrong one. Nope, she's got the right ammunition. She's got a gun, she's got a knife. I mean, this looks like she's going to go to war with Mick. And it's so realistic because the scariest thing is the person who can sneak up on you and you don't know they're there. And I picked something up because I've been around this, but I could tell he was special forces. His tattoo, he's got the eagle with the sword going through that. He was clearly part of some kind of special unit. You could tell by his shooting and stuff. It's kind of subtly implied. And the way that they set up where she's looking for a car, and literally he comes from out of nowhere's like he's a part of the shadows, and just they don't do even a jump scare. There's not the dun, it's just you hear the knife go into her back and like scrape. And then when he sits there and describes what he's doing to her is so much more disturbing than even visually seeing it. Like they show us, but the way he's describing it, and he has such joy. Boy, in the Vietnam War, they used to do this. I'll pick on a stick. I was like, wow. You see how cold and callous this guy is. And I don't know about you, Stevie, but I honestly thought she was the one who got away. I didn't know the story at the time. And so when that happens, I'm like, well, maybe no, he severed her spinal cord. She's not going anywhere. And what's really haunting about that scene is they don't show the final kill. You just see in her eyes him going like this, and then they cut the camera. I thought that was an excellent use because, like I said, and where horror goes wrong, you don't have to show everything. You can do cuts, and your imagination is worse than anything they can show. Like you could just glean anything from what happened after that.
Yeah, you're right. Well, they had the gruesome part in that scene where she got stabbed and he was talking about it, which was just completely like gut churning to hear him describing what was happening, and you could hear the sounds and everything. So that was the gruesome part of the scene. So I think you're right. It was very clever to cut away and not show the actual kill, because they'd already had the gruesome part and the rest is assumed. And your imagination when he's describing that stuff is just like, oh my God, like all the things that are going through your head when when you're watching that. And I agree. I think, when I first watched it, I thought she was going to be the one to get away because of everything that she'd done. And I thought she was doing everything pretty much right. I was like, yeah, good choice. and then,
Yeah.
and then she ended up with the knife in her back. And so at that point, I was like, all right, well, what's going to happen now? Like, where do we go from here? And yeah, it just shows you though, on a $1.4 million budget, what you can do if you actually care about it. He rewrote the entire script to make it what it was, and it shows. It was really, really well done.
Yeah, I think it's amazing that when you shoot and you do practical effects and stuff, there's sort of this thing with the new style of horror where they need CGI blood and things like that. And I think, don't get me wrong, I like the Saw movies. Me and the girl were watching them, and we got a kick out of the last ones because at some point the story becomes irrelevant. But that first Saw movie was brilliant and set up a lot of things that was also on a small budget. And these movies were kind of coming out around the same time, and they proved you didn't need a lot of blood and gore and people's guts getting ripped out to scare people. You just need good shots and that tense feeling. And like now, when I think about what the Conjuring universe has done, I really hate that franchise for one reason, because it brought back jump scares and the stupid music and loud things, and like they bang on something first and there's nothing there. I hate that kind of horror. This to me is real horror because it's it's that concept of the thing you can't see that bumps into the night. Someone's so evil, and this isn't like you know the way they make his character out. He's a real person. He goes around town. He pals around. He's in that bar in the beginning. I went back through and watched. He's in that bar when they get in the fight with the guy. He's sitting in the background. They show it later. So, clearly he's around the community. People know him, right? He seems like that guy if you were in the bar you hang out with and he'd tell jokes and you'd be laughing. And that to me is more terrifying because when someone like that switches and you find out they're this evil, evil monster, but they're human, that is more scary than Michael Myers who comes back from 50 bullets, or Jason who just never seems to die, or Freddy Krueger who lives in dreams. This is real. There are people like this. They could be your next door neighbor. And I think that is where the fear is. Now, let me talk about something interesting because this movie is quite interesting in the fact that I went on Rotten Tomatoes. The critics gave it 54, which they don't like horror, so whatever.
54, what a joke.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing. The people gave it 53. And most of the comments I hear is not that it's not a good movie, but that it's too gruesome or too gory. And I just want to get this out of the way. This movie is not that gruesome. Like, this really is. Watch Saw. Watch Saw 2. I mean, that's gore. That's gore for the sake of gore. This is not that gory. It's just in people's minds. This guy is so scary that they don't know how to put how terrifying this is. I mean, there's an implied like he's gonna rape this girl, and that was another complaint I heard. But he doesn't do anything. The girl knocks him over the head. But the way he motions and gestures, he grabs the back of her head and, does some inappropriate stuff. It puts stuff in people's mind where they're like, they're automatically like, oh my God, what a pig. You know what I mean? But that's the design. This guy is a rapist. He's a murderer. He's everything that's evil seems to be in this guy. Like, he butchers the men, clearly, but what he does to the women must be horrendous. And the thing is, they never show you. And that's what makes it more scary. That's what makes people, I guess, more offended, is the implication is just as powerful as showing it.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know why critics do that, where they just, they go, oh, horror, it's no good. Or they go, it's too gruesome. I mean, I agree, it wasn't gory at all, and it wasn't really that gruesome. It was all the thought, it was all the unseen stuff that was so terrifying. And it was terrifying. It was a very, very scary movie. But this is what I don't get as well. Like, if you're a critic, don't you understand on a fundamental level that if it's a horror movie, it's made to be scary, it's made to be terrifying, it's made to be all of those things. So if it was made well and it achieved all of those things, which Wolf Creek absolutely did, then it should be getting a good review, it should be getting a good rating, because it's not like it said, go and watch Wolf Creek, it's a new rom-com. And then they're like, oh no, it wasn't anything like a rom-com. It's a horror movie. It's meant to scare people. It scared people. So, big tick. It wins. Like, and none of that. I think to achieve that level of fear without having gore and gruesome stuff is so much more of an achievement than to just have jump scares, big scary monsters, or um, crazy blood and gore and stuff like that. I mean, you were talking about Alien before. That's one of the things that made that so damn scary, is because you rarely ever see the alien. You rarely ever see it, if ever. It just takes people, it attacks people, but you never really ever see it. Same thing with Predator. You don't see, like, Predator's not necessarily a horror movie, but same thing there. You don't see the Predator all the time. It just does all this stuff, and it instills the fear in the characters and in the audience as well.
Yeah, and that's the interesting part is, like, I expect for a movie like Saw or Jason or one of those to get that kind of review because that's the slasher genre is famously known for that. And there's different genres in horror. There's slasher, there's paranormal, And then there's stuff like this, serial killers and psychological. And this is very much psychological. And even when I'm reading the reviews, I'm thinking that it really got to people and that their ratings were low because it did its job. It was effective in what it did. They're like, oh, this is disturbing. This is outrageous. And it's like, then that means it did what it was supposed to do, because it's not even as brutal as you are making it out to be. Your mind is projecting that it is that brutal, which the film director delivered very well. That's what he was going for. He wanted you to think about this stuff. So let's talk about the ending for a bit, because it's one of my favorite things. Ben wakes up. He is actually the survivor. Spoiler alerts. And he's the one who wakes up, and this whole scene is probably the most gruesome, and where he pulls his hands from the nail, and he's pinned up like on a cross, and he has to pull his hands free, and he's got some kind of wire wrapped around his wrist, right? Now, when I say the end, I don't mean the part where he's walking and stuff. At the very end of the movie, when they show you all those clips and him going to courtroom, for me, it was so terrifying, that last shot, because you find out after all this, the guy got off scot-free. And I looked it up. They had evidence and they didn't convict him. And I thought maybe you might know a little bit more than I do, because you're around the area. How does all of this stuff go down? They have all of this evidence and no conviction. Like, what happened? How did this guy get off scot-free?
He turned them all into a pig on a stick, all the judge and the jury and everything. No, look, I don't know, to be honest. I don't know all the 100% ins and outs and details and everything like that. But I know there was some discussion around the time about connecting the evidence 100% to him. There was some issue with being able to connect it properly and 100% to him, but it's one of those things that at the time, like, this was big news here. I was only, what are we talking, in the 90s? Yeah, I was only a young kid really at the time, but I remember it being on the news a lot. And there was this talk of, because Peter Falconio was another, and they had all of this, talk of backpackers and people going missing and all of this sort of stuff. But I do remember them. I do remember them talking about a lack of connecting evidence. So they had a bunch of evidence, but they couldn't either connect all of it, or they couldn't connect most of it to him. So they were really struggling with that part of it. It's been like, not to say it's funny, but it's been a bit of a joke here for a while about going out to the outback, or backpackers getting taken, or whatever. Like, and I don't mean it to be sort of, we don't mean it to be kind of crass, I guess, but it's just one of those things. Like, it happened, it was horrible, and then it's just our nature. We turn everything into a bit of a joke. So, like, we would if a friend comes over and you're like, oh, I'll just chuck my stuff in your boot, and they're like, oh no, don't put it in there. And you're like, what? You got a couple of backpackers in there or something? just silly stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it really is. It was an interesting case, and you think more and more of this stuff has happened around Australia. We're not a crime-free country, that's for sure, and we got our own thing, our own group of psychos here. One of the actually, talking about that, this is a little bit off topic, but I reckon there's going to be a movie over the next few years come out about an abduction that happened here. So this young boy, I think, what was his name? William Terrell, I think his name was. He was 3 years old and he was playing at the front of his house in the front yard, and he went missing. And this is like 8 years ago. He's never been found. Nothing, no, nothing. They cannot find a single thing to figure out where he went, what happened to him. So, there's talk of, did an uncle come over, or did it, something like that. But at some point, he was just snatched off the front lawn and never seen again. So, even though they don't know what happened, I reckon it's something that we could see a movie from sometime over the next couple of years.
Oh yeah, you know how Hollywood is, or anyone in the media. And yes, PV, we are still live now. Um, it's one of those things where, uh, this isn't exclusive to Australia or Germany or anything like that. America itself, I mean, we got Ed Gein, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, the Zodiac Killer, Son of Sam. We got all of our people too. And Ted Bundy's probably falls in the lane of Mick Taylor, where he's very charismatic serial killer, where he was that guy that came out and he was like, oh, he was so nice, and then you find out he slaughtered a dorm full of college girls. So I mean, like with a baseball bat, like it's we have our own monsters here, but it's very interesting because it's that whole thing, and I heard this in the service too. There's certain areas you shouldn't go in, you should take certain precautions, don't leave your drinks out, things like that. And it's this feeling of when people travel, and what does make this scary is, but when people travel, they seem to be so naive to the fact that even though you're going to another country, that doesn't mean they don't have their own crime, their own things that happen, certain areas you shouldn't go into, and they have such disregard for their own safety. And I think that's what this movie covers well too, is that, oh yeah, it's a beautiful place to go. And this guy, that was his hunting ground. He specifically knew where these tourists were going to end up, because apparently it was a big tourist attraction, and he like hunted people there. And it's just like, when you look at the movie now and you're rewatching, you're like, yeah, that is kind of in the middle of nowhere, like like 3 Mile trail. Like, I don't think I'd be that ambitious to walk all the way to that fucking crater, It looked hot as hell too. That's just not for me. But it really proves the naivety. And the thing is, these characters were likable. And like I said, they didn't really do anything stupid. They were average people. Their car broke down. They got help from a stranger. The girl tried to get them out of this bad situation. They didn't really do anything wrong, except for the fact that they weren't cautious. And I think if there's a big takeaway, is that these monsters, to make a good horror movie, you have all the material you need. You don't have to over sensationalize the headlines. There's plenty of monsters out there, and this guy really framed this monster particularly well, because he's not some boogeyman or some guy with a giant knife who hunts people on Halloween. He's a normal guy you can meet at the bar and not even know it. You can shake hands with him, throw darts, drink a beer, and you would never know that this guy was the most vicious serial killer you've ever met in your whole entire life. You literally just met the devil in human form and shook hands. You know that saying, like shaking hands with the devil? That's what I think about this guy now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's what makes it really so scary, isn't it? Because he just is a normal guy, or appears to be a normal guy, and then all of a sudden you got a knife in your back.
And he's joking while he's doing it. And I think that's the brilliance, is the fact of how this movie was handled, how this guy was so joyful, and even when he's talking and he's stabbing people, don't get me wrong, I was shocked, but I don't know about you. There were some scenes where I was kind of like laughing, like not laughing like ha ha ha, it's funny, but a nervous laugh, like, that just happened. Wow, this guy's fucked up. Like because he plays it, you can't help but to chuckle with some of the shit he's saying while he's torturing these people. Like,
Oh yeah,
eh,
and you know it's ridiculous. Like what he's saying is ridiculous, but yeah, I know what you mean. It's some points in there you just have to have a bit of a chuckle.
because you're like, wow, like that's a really inappropriate joke, but it seems to fit what's going on right now. And so that's why I wanted us to review this because, and I know you were pretty excited about this because this is the kind of horror that's really underrated today. It's very psychological and it's also gruesome at the same time, and they blend it so well. And I wish more horror movies, being a horror fan, would be like this. Less is more. I don't need to see a bunch of guts and heads being severed off to be scared. The stuff you don't show me, my imagination can do the work. Horror really needs to lean, and you don't need a big budget. Like this thing was made for 1.3 million, right? 1.3 mil, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And it did 27 over in Australia and like 30 here in the States. So they made more than their money back.
Yeah, absolutely. And they continue to make money with the rest of the second movie, and then there's the show. So they're making good coin out of it. I just wish Hollywood would wake up and realize that they don't need to spend millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars to try and do something that's good. I mean, just find a garden show host and get him to play a serial killer. That's it.
There you go. I could get Gordon Ramsay. I could see that guy doing a great serial killer.
That would work. That would work.
Oh, you a bloody idiot! My grandmother, my dead grandmother could cook better than you. No, that's got to be a horror movie being in his kitchen. I wouldn't even know what to do. And the funny part is that guy is nice as hell, from what I've seen in real life. But when he's in that kitchen,
Yeah.
boy, that's the Mick Taylor of kitchens. Anyways, that's been our show. I got to go shopping with the girl for
Awesome.
shoes. You guys want to see a horror movie? Go shopping. Okay, go shopping. The girl's like, how does this look? Why are you asking me? Because I'm going to tell you, well, honey, it looks good. And you're going to say, I don't like it. Why did you ask me? What was the... Oh, guys, that's the worst horror movie. The Mall. Someone should just do, if they did a horror movie on going shopping with your girlfriend or wife, every guy in America would endorse that. That'd be like millions of dollars right there. It'd be like, man, I could relate that poor bastard. Get out of there.
Absolutely.
But anyways, yeah, I'm gonna get going. Stevie, do you got anything coming out? I know you've been doing some great like Walter Cronkite coverage of this Johnny Depp thing. God, that's so I've learned all sorts of new things from watching your coverage. So you want to tell the folks about any videos and your Johnny Depp stuff and all that on Stevie J?
Look, I'm doing different sort of stuff on my channel these days. I'm doing the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp stuff, which is to me is it never used to be interesting, but now it's interesting because her lies keep getting exposed, and I'm really enjoying that. So, a new video came out just the other day, where originally it was edited to make it look like Depp was this big monster. But now watching the full video, it's nothing like that. So I found that interesting. So I got a few videos on that. I actually did a quick stream before this. So that's probably sitting there now if anyone wants to watch that. But yeah, just doing some of that. I'm also going to be covering some Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell type topics as well. And a bit of other news that's going around. So yeah, that's what's going on. Thanks for having me on again, mate. It's awesome to catch up and talk about Wolf Creek, one of my favorites.
Yeah, I always enjoy these every Sunday. I always look forward to us breaking down a movie. Hopefully we'll get back to the normal situation. Maybe put a poll up and have you guys pick because I like you guys to pick, so can take our creative minds and kind of break it down and tell you guys what we think because we are both very passionate about films. But yeah, I've been doing a news segment. It's becoming quite popular, apparently. Fandom news with my father, Big Lee, or Admiral Zod, if you want to call him that. But yeah, we break down some news stories. Last night we talked about Kamala Harris being running mates of Biden and how ridiculous of a ticket that is. So if you guys want to go and watch that, that was really great. PB's in the comments. He was on there with us, and we were just having a great time talking about that. A possible vaccine for COVID and how they don't want to tell you there's an over-the-counter medicine for it that's been out apparently for years, and no one's talking about it because they don't want you to have it because they want to come up with their own vaccine for the virus. So we got that up there. And we also have the late night talks where we talked about some really funny stuff. The remake to Fresh Prince, which is going to be a drama now instead of a comedy because I asked for that. So glad. Thank you. And yeah, but we talked about that stuff. So come see the show, enjoy the cast. I'm gonna have a talk with PB eventually. We're gonna talk about the Umbrella Club. We were talking, or the Umbrella Academy. We were talking about this last night. Apparently, PB's got a lot of things to say about it. So we're gonna do a little roundtable. Um, I think I more enjoyed it than he did. So it'll be a good back and forth. Maybe we'll get some other people on that talk. But anyways, thank y'all for coming out. And remember, the only rule here in the fandom zone, make sure you have a proper knife